Justin Wagner. TJ McCormick will now deliver a statement from Mr. Murphy.
Oh, mic's number? Okay, yeah, I'm going to pick it up a little while. Good evening, my name is TJ McCormick and I am Communications Director for Dr. Terrence Murphy. And the only reason he is not here tonight is because he did have a commitment elsewhere, and while it is the electronic age, we have not mastered the ability to make two candidates out of one. So he does send his regrets and ensures everybody that you count just as much as everybody is where he is this evening. Dr. Terrence Murphy is a doctor of chiropractic. He's a small business owner out of the town of Yorktown. He also owns a restaurant with his family. And Dr. Murphy is in fact concerned about the state of the American dream in New York. Dr. Murphy, I will just really boil it down to simple stuff. There's not even enough time for rhetoric, and that's a shame from my part. But Dr. Murphy believes in repealing and replacing the Common Core. Dr. Murphy will in fact do everything he can to repeal the SAFE Act, which turns law-abiding citizens into criminals. He will in fact cut taxes across the board. He believes in the plight, he understands the plight of the small business person. Dr. Murphy would in fact vote for 9 out of the 10 points of the Women's Equality Act. Dr. Murphy is in fact very much pro-woman. You can ask his daughter and his wife. He would in fact indeed vote on all 9 out of the 10 points of the Women's Equality Act. He does not seek to relitigate Roe versus Wade. He understands that abortion is the law of the land in New York, and it's not going anywhere. He understands that. Dr. Murphy would make a priority the battling of the heroin epidemic that is a scourge in our neighborhoods right now. Of course, he is a healthcare professional. And Dr. Murphy has a record to back all of this up. He wrote about the first consecutive tax cuts in a generation in Yorktown, and he also did a heck of a job bringing in $250 million, hold on, in economic development. Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, and best of luck to Justin Wagner. Thank you.
Mr. Wagner will now have his 2-minute opening statement.
Well, good evening. I guess I'm up last, and if you don't mind, I'm going to stand. If there's one thing I learned from our current senator, Senator Ball, that you debate on your feet, and so I'm going to stand here if that's okay. My name is Justin Wagner. I am running for the state senate in what is the 40th district. For those of you who don't follow political maps, that district starts up in Dutchess County, pretty much where I went to school in Arlington Schools, Beekman and Pauling, snakes down through this half of Putnam, not all of Putnam, and then goes down to Chappaqua and Valhalla. It's a beautiful district, it's a big district, and we're putting a lot of miles on the car. I grew up here. I shouldn't mention this in Mahopac, but I used to play basketball against this high school and also play soccer. We beat you in soccer, we lost to you in basketball pretty consistently. And after I went away to college and law school, my wife came right back to New York. And got married on the banks of the Hudson in Poughkeepsie. At the time, it was the happiest day of my life until a little bit longer. We had a daughter, Samantha, and that was the happiest day of my life. And we're raising Samantha in Croton, right here in the Hudson Valley. The Hudson Valley is a wonderful place to raise a family. I believe in the Hudson Valley, but we need some help. You know, as someone who's not in the political class right now, I know the definition of insanity is doing the same thing time and time again and expecting different results. Yet we send the same special interests, the same folks to Albany, year after year after year, and surprise, we get the same results. We need reform, and that means reform of our property tax system. We're passing out in the back our property tax plan, fundamental reforms to change the way property taxes are structured to lower the burden on middle-class families, because we have to keep middle-class families here in this area. The story of this district, of this region, are middle-class families being priced out to the places of Carolinas and Florida. That can't happen. We also need to reform our broken campaign finance system, our ethics system, and I'm out of time, but I'm looking forward to your questions, and I'm also looking forward to the future debates with Dr. Murphy, which I know are scheduled.
What's the next person? No question.
Okay. Christine Christine,
Yeah, that's-
Jonathan?
Christine, I know Christine.
Yes, you may ask the question.
Intended for Andy Clark. Oh, that's I'm going to ask you a question anyway. And again, I'm not going to ask about Stop Common Court because we already had that conversation. In addition to being a small business owner, my husband's retired military. My son is an Eagle Scout. They both, on occasion, have liked to shoot guns. They both say they know way more about the SAFE Act issues than I do because I'm a girl and I don't really care.
Sure.
But I know there are some things about it that did make guns illegal for legal owners, and I'd like to know how you would help the residents of Putnam County with that.
Sure. And if you don't mind, I'd also like to just mention, you mentioned your husband was former military, right?
Yes, he's retired sergeant from the Army.
And I do make this point when I go around. I know right now Putnam County has a senator from Putnam County, and before that, Putnam County had a senator from Putnam County for decades. This year, in both Senate districts, you may know there is not a single person running for the state Senate from Putnam County. One of the things I've committed to do, as someone who doesn't live that far, is to be Putnam County's voice. One of the things that I think our current senator is doing a pretty good job on, and you wouldn't be surprised, Joe knows this, we don't agree on everything, but the senator is doing a good job bringing the stories of our veterans into our schools. I'll address your guns question in a second. I just wanted to make this point. I only have 2 minutes. Oh, yeah, I'll be quick then. The Veterans Hall of Fame that Senator Ball has done is a fantastic program. I have a 3-year-old. I'm very worried. She's going to grow up in a world where she's not going to know a World War II vet. I think bringing those stories into the schools are important. On the SAFE Act, listen, I favor background checks. I favor banning assault weapons. There are parts of the SAFE Act that should not have been rushed through. It should not have been voted on at midnight. But I believe in common sense gun safety, and if I wasn't out of time, I would continue. Can I just keep talking? I mean, there's no debate here. Can I answer the question?
Does anyone ask a follow-up question to my question?
Is that okay? I promise I won't take too long. So I'm on the board of New Yorkers Against Gun Violence. It's an organization that does work in at-risk communities. It's a nonprofit that teaches students, high school students, that using a gun is never the answer. Listen, gun violence in this country has a lot of root causes. Some of them are our mental health system, some of them has to do with parenting, but some of them has to do with access to guns. And so the parts of the SAFE Act that I agree with are the background check piece, the assault weapon piece. But what I fundamentally disagree with is voting on any bill at midnight. And I favor, Senator Gibson has a bill called the Vampire Voting Act. It's a great name. You cannot vote on a bill when most people in New York State are asleep. So, I think it's fair. And we also were supposed to have a 3-day aging requirement when it comes to voting. That was rushed through with the message of necessity. I think we should have let that bill sit for 3 days, let the public read it, make their phone calls, and then take the vote. But I do favor gun safety measures, and that's my position.
Next question? Yes, sir. Here, come on.
Hi, my name is Hank McLaughlin. I'm a resident of Mahopac. I was reading an article the other day about a confirmed threat in another state where someone was threatening an attack on a school. And they were looking into the situation, and what really bothered me is they said, we're going to go after this person, and if we find them, they're going to be subject to a possibility of 1 year in jail and a $500 fine. My question is, how do you feel about that level of punishment for someone who's threatening to kill people, school children?
Well, I appreciate the question. One thing I unfortunately cannot profess to be is an expert in criminal justice, so I'm going to accept your premise that is the penalty. I actually don't know. That would seem way too low for me. We've seen this district, by the way, folks know, goes all the way to the Connecticut border. You can throw a stone, if you have a really good arm, into Connecticut from this district, and the places that Newtown affected. Attacks on schools, and we lost, families in this region lost people in Newtown. That is an issue that is near and dear to the heart of so many folks in this region. That penalty that you just described would be way too low, in my estimation. But again, I have to be completely honest with you. I'm not a criminal defense attorney. I don't actually know what the penalties are, but they certainly should be stricter than 1 year.
Any more questions? Yes. Bob, all right.
Good evening, Justin. How you doing?
Carmel this time, or where are you from?
Yonkers. No.
You're not in the district then, sit down.
My question is, the infrastructure in New York State stinks. The roads in New York State stink. As a motorcyclist, when my friends and I, when we ride, we go to Connecticut. Why do we go to Connecticut? The roads are better. And where do we spend our money? We spend our money in Connecticut. What are you going to do about the road situations here? Because this patch stuff that they do, like on Route 6, where they just do the right shoulder, it makes everything, thank you, it makes driving very hazardous. And it's bad enough as we become senior citizens that we have to put up with decrepit road conditions. Thank you.
Well, listen, the number one job of a New York State Senator is to bring resources back to the district. And a lot of those resources have to go to infrastructure. It's the number one thing the state can do, number one or number two thing the state can do to encourage job growth, is make sure that we're rebuilding our bridges, our roads, our decrepit schools. We have, in Putnam County and Dutchess County, I'm going to mess up the stats here, but something like 30 to 50%, depending on the county, of our bridges have been deemed structurally deficient. Think about that. Now, the Tappan Zee Bridge project is right in my district. We're putting a lot of people to work. That's great. And that's a big example of what we can do. But how about all the other little bridges, the roads that are breaking, that are deemed by our engineers in New York State structurally deficient? And at the same time, as we have that need on the transportation side, the highest unemployment group right now in this region are the trades, people who build things. So we have a real opportunity to put people back to work and lay the foundation for economic growth. And that's what infrastructure is. It's a runway that economic growth can take off on. And I'm absolutely committed to rebuilding New York's infrastructure.
Next question.
I have a statement. Okay. Thank you.
How are you?
Justin, this question is not to you, I'm sorry, but it's a statement that I was asked to ask of Councilman Murphy, and they would like it put into the record. Okay. Susanna Glidden, I'm a Westchester resident, North Salem. It's well known that Councilman Murphy supported a failed attempt by Yorktown to alienate town-owned parkland at Granite Knolls West Park to Spectra Energy that would have enabled the gas company to use 23 acres of parkland for an enormous construction yard temporarily, as well as permanently keep an additional acre of land for an industrial cleaning procedure called pigging that produces radioactive byproducts, lead and polonium, that can enter the air and soil. The land would have been clear-cut, graded and leveled. I have to speed this up a bit. Sensitive 600-acre greenway. Now, if the alienation had passed, the town was purported to receive a number of perks for the use of the land. Please tell us, Councilman Murphy, was there a written agreement between Spectra and the town before the alienation vote? If another attempt at alienation is made that included permanent alienation of 1 acre, would you support it as a councilman or as a state senator, knowing that a pigging station were to be housed in a park where families and children play? Thank you, Justin.
Any more questions?
So if it's okay, I'm not going to respond for Dr. Murphy. His vote and record is clear, and it's not fair to debate someone who's not here. But I can tell you my position on the Algonquin gas pipeline, and that is I think it is wrong for our communities. I did what I think a responsible legislator would do. I met with people on both sides. I sat down with Spectra. I sat down with residents who are affected. This expansion of this pipeline would actually go up within feet of a school in Buchanan. It would go actually within feet of a playground that my daughter plays on in the town of Cortland. There are a lot of unanswered questions, and Spectra hasn't answered them. In the state legislature, as you may know, you mentioned the alienation of parkland that was voted on in Yorktown. Again, I'm not going to characterize Dr. Murphy's not here, but if that bill had passed Yorktown, it would have needed approval by the state. That's what alienation needs. And I have pledged that any alienation of parkland with respect to this pipeline will be dead on arrival. Because it's the home state senator or home state assembly person that gets these bills in. I will do everything possible to stop those type of transfers of land. I think we need real answers from this gas company. They haven't given them yet. I testified at FERC. I was one of the first people to speak out on this issue, and I'll continue to do it. It's a tough road. FERC approves and rubber stamps a lot of this stuff, but how united the community's become. There's a Republican mayor in Peekskill that we don't agree on anything. We're standing together on this project. Teresa Knickerbocker, an independent mayor of Buchanan, very Republican area. We're standing together. This has really united this region, and I think it's good for us to make sure we're making our voices heard.
Thank you.
It is now 8:30 and the library will close in half an hour at 9 p.m. In approximately 20 minutes, we will be turning off all computers, copiers, and printers. If your computer has a timer, please refer to them to see exactly how much time you have left. If you need to apply for a library card, please do so now. Thank you.
Justin, a lot of people have spoken about the matter of economic development for our region. Would you please share with us your vision of what can be done in Albany to improve the economic conditions in Putnam County?
Sure. Well, listen, the first piece of this, what I already mentioned, is we have to rebuild our infrastructure. We have an office in Brewster with Congressman Maloney that's become quite the controversy in some papers. But that office actually tells a neat story. Because on Main Street, there's all kind of construction. Constantly, people are detoured around Main Street, Brewster. They're passing by, not driving by. They're being rerouted around the very small businesses that should be employing people. So rebuilding infrastructure and making sure that we have roads, we have bridges that are up to snuff, helps our small businesses. But we also need to pump money into small business. My district, I grew up, my dad was an IBMer, and the fact that he had a secure job as an engineer is what put a roof over our heads. But the state gives billions of dollars to companies like that. And if they're creating jobs, I think that's great. But some of these companies are bleeding jobs at the same time we're giving them all this tax money. I would use those tax incentives, get it to Main Street, and employ regular folks in Putnam, Dutchess, and Westchester.
Any more questions?
Got 20 minutes according to the...
I got one more. Sorry, I'm going to have to read this. Bear with me for a second. I can't see the time thing without my glasses on, so I'm sorry. Okay. Everybody, I think, here knows that the school district's unfunded mandates, very squeezed, 2% tax cap. On top of that, over the summer, we had issues with unaccompanied minors coming into this country. They are coming into school districts in Putnam County and Westchester, Dutchess. This is a quote from the New York State Education Department website on how to deal with refugee students in your school district. Teachers should not assume that refugee students arriving to their classrooms lack background knowledge. SIFE students have a wealth of experiences that require structured nurturing on the part of school's administrators and teachers. What distinguishes SIFE, and I'm sorry, I can't look up what SIFE students, but refugee students from other immigrant students, is distress, frustration, high risk for dropout, and gaps found in literacy and academic content knowledge. The New York State Education Department recommends districts establish programs for ELLs who are also safe students. My question is, what would you propose? How would you propose we come up with this money?
Sure. Well, I will do something that I hope is not controversial, but I will not speak about something that I don't have a lot of knowledge of. I do know that there certainly have been a lot of cases of refugee children coming here. I obviously read the newspaper. Our federal government has failed when it comes to an immigration policy that makes sense, but we're stuck with the burden often as local communities. I think the state, the federal government has got to find the communities that are most impacted. A lot of those, by the way, may be in urban areas. I don't know. And so I don't want to speak without direct knowledge of where that burden is levied, but we certainly should be fighting for money from the federal government, from the state government, if these burdens are falling on our local school districts. But Christine, I have to profess, I'm going to have to learn more to answer your question and any great knowledge. And I apologize about that, but I'll learn what that acronym means and we can talk tomorrow.
Next question. Yes, sir.
I have several questions.
Several, okay.
Several. The first one is about seniors.
Sure.
Reading in the newspaper, excuse me, my name is Pat Perry. I'm from Southeast. A lot of families that have at least one child received a check within the last week or two for $350 each. As far as I know, not one senior was included. One out of every 4 voters is a senior. I'm aware. There's also a lot of veterans in the state, disabled otherwise. They didn't receive any checks. And so what is your plan to help seniors? What's your plan to help veterans? We all vote? I'll bet you in this room right now, over 60 years old, 60% of you. Where is your check? And I've got one further thing, here's briefly. Everyone is arguing over Tilly Foster Farm. They're arguing over about 7 or 8 acres. There's 200 acres there. If they want to build something, go in the back, go in Huntley Road. Leave those buildings alone. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'm going to address the seniors and the veterans question because I know better than to wade into that. This is personal to me. I grew up idolizing my grandfather, who was a World War II vet in the town of Poughkeepsie cop. I saw when he got sick, the care he got at Castle Point Hospital, spending months there, and how important the VA system is. So it disgusts me when I see the stories that we saw out of Arizona and California about the type of care the VA was giving. What the state can do, and I want to be honest with you, a lot of this has to do with the federal government, and I don't want to make promises that I can't cash. But what the state can do is make sure that the EPIC program that is supposed to help middle-class seniors with drug costs actually helps all middle-class seniors. Right now, the income threshold is very low. It may not be low if you live in Niagara County or upstate, but here in a very high-income area, the EPIC threshold is too low. Most seniors don't get any benefit from it. We should increase that threshold so we can help middle-class seniors with drug costs. I see you're giving me the sign, but can I keep going? You asked some great questions. We also need to make sure that Senior Star, or Enhanced Star as it's called, is beefed up. And that's one of the ways we get money back in the pockets of seniors who own homes. And the property tax burden crushes everyone, but it especially crushes our seniors who are on a fixed income. And so that Enhanced Star program, we don't need to just protect it, we need to beef it up and put more resources behind it. With respect to veterans, I will be an absolute bulwark fighting to keep the VA at Montrose all open. There have been proposals to privatize pieces of that, to sell it off. I know the federal government can make some money, but absolutely not. Castle Point and Montrose are the pillars in our community. And as someone who has family members who spent time there, and knowing what it means to our veterans, I will protect Montrose.
Next question? Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry. He gets the picture. I'm sorry.
And you can do it.
As of last year, New York State told the school districts that they can give an exemption to veterans on their school tax. Since that has started, you have schools such as Brewster and Carmel who gave veterans exemptions. You have Lakeland that did nothing. You have Mahopac that's dragging its feet. My question is, why did the state come up and say, this is how much we're going to give our veterans, our combat veterans, our disabled veterans, this percentage, and we will reimburse the school districts, because I'm a combat Vietnam veteran. And I don't mind getting that exemption on my school tax. I have never had any kids, but I've been paying for 30 years for school taxes, which I don't mind. But I'll be damned if, I feel bad about taking it from the people that have kids, because what I don't have to pay, they have to pay. I think it should have been up to the state to give the money back to the school. How do you feel about that?
Sure. Bob, again, thank you for your service, and I agree with you. I mean, this is what politics has become, is that Albany has these great ideas and wants to have press conferences about these great ideas, but they don't want to pay for them, so they push the cost down. And in this situation, they've actually set up conflicts in our school boards between good veterans, people who deserve a tax break, and other taxpayers who say my taxes are too high. So I absolutely agree with you. If the state wanted to give the vets a tax break, and they should have done it across the board and not kick the can. I agree. And that goes against a lot of people in my party and the other party who all voted for it, because they all put out press releases about how great it was. But we can do better in Albany. We can have a system where we actually are honest with people. And this comes back to, no one's asked about the property tax plan. I think it's a little too boring. But these unfunded mandates are killing localities. Albany comes up with all these ideas to run for re-election, and they kick the cost to our counties, they kick the cost to our towns and to our villages. I believe if Albany has a good idea, Albany should pay for it. And I favor a constitutional amendment to ban unfunded mandates. And if I can just point out that is a bipartisan proposal. Senator Gibson, who's a Democrat, and Assemblyman Lowell, who is a very conservative Republican in Dutchess County, both are on that bill. I would join it. Our suburbs should be united in stopping these mandates.
I didn't quite understand the gentleman's talking about we didn't receive our checks.
Oh, sure.
Is he speaking of the tax-free checks that are to be sent out?
I believe, and you can correct me if I think I know what you're talking about. So there's $350 rebate checks sent to certain qualifying folks in the state these past couple of weeks. If you received the check, you probably know. If you didn't receive the check, you probably didn't qualify. And I think his point, which I agree with, is that the selection of the checks, the eligibility of the checks, wasn't necessarily optimal. If we were looking to put money back in the hands of middle-class New Yorkers, there may have been a different way to do it. At the same time, I favor cutting taxes for middle-class New Yorkers. It was an effort by the legislature, it was an effort by the governor to put money, more money back in the pockets of homeowners. It was an effort. I think his point is a good one about certain seniors, certain vets may not have gotten money. That is something we can rectify. But as a general matter, cutting taxes for middle-class New Yorkers when the budget did have a surplus, was probably the right thing to do. Whether a rebate check 3 weeks before the election was the right thing to do, I think it's an open question.
Right.
Yes, that will be our last question, and you can have your 2-minute closing statement.
So this Senate race has become really important for not just the residents of this district, but a lot of special interest around the state. And if you live in the district, your mailboxes may have been filling up with a lot of garbage. The news in my life today is actually my 3-year-old daughter. Today was the first day she was fully potty trained. She went to school today without a diaper. So me being here, I'll stay as late as you want. My wife is going to kill me. But I'm actually dealing with more crap on this campaign. And that's because the special interests in Albany are ganging up to try to buy this Senate seat. And if you look at today's filings, which you may not, but I do, a group of real estate moguls dropped just today over $100,000 into my opponent's campaign. I'm not here, my opponent's not here, so I'm going to let him defend himself. But they are pledged to spend millions of dollars in a state Senate race in the next couple of weeks. So you're going to see a lot of garbage on your TV, a lot of garbage in your mailboxes. But I want you to remember that I am here to work for you, that I show up, that I take questions, and that I will be the most accessible senator you've ever had. That is my pledge to Putnam, it's my pledge to Dutchess, where I grew up, it's my pledge to Westchester, where I'm raising my family. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, and the hour is late, the library is closing, but this has been a really nice discussion, so thank you.
Before we dismiss everyone, we just have a few words to say. We'd like to say thank you to our candidates, our residents, and to Mahopac Library for allowing us to use this wonderful facility. The general election is on Tuesday, November 4th. The polls are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. All registered voters are eligible to vote in this election. Please exercise your right to cast your ballot for the candidates of your choice. Many elections are decided by one vote, so your vote may be crucial. Before closing, I will turn the microphone over to Jerry Rubitsky, President of CRCM, for one last time.
Thank you all for attending, and I want you to give a round of applause.
Jerry, you need to sign. 15 seconds.
That is an example of the of what our youth can be, and he's very involved in activities at the high school, and we're very happy to have him as our spokesperson today. Thank you.